If you're familiar at all with Dave Ramsey, you've probably heard of his housing advice. He advises that you not buy a house on which the payment is more than 25% of your household take-home pay on a 15-year fixed-rate mortgage. Now, that's been Dave's advice for 30 years. But in the last 30 years, housing has gotten just a little bit more expensive, and household incomes have not exactly kept pace. So it begs the question, is Dave's housing advice completely out of touch and out of date? Or can you still buy a house according to Dave Ramsey's guidelines? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. We're going to look at how much house you can afford on your specific income according to Dave Ramsey. Then we're going to look at what's available on the housing market in America currently. And finally, if you are still dead set on buying a house the Dave Ramsey way, we're going to look at some strategies that I and other people have used to buy a house according to Dave Ramsey's guidelines in recent years. So let's dive in. Now, before we completely get into this, we've got to make a couple of assumptions, right? If we're talking about mortgages, we've got to assume an interest rate. Now, at the time of this video, your typical 15-year mortgage is going for about 6%. And interestingly, 30-year mortgages are going for about 7%. So you're saving a full percentage point by going with the 15-year. That's what it is currently. So we're going to go with 6% as our mortgage rate. Next, we got to assume a down payment. We're going to assume that you're putting down 10% on this purchase. That's fairly standard. And then we got to remember that Dave's numbers are always PITI. That's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So we got to figure out what the insurance and tax situation looks like. Now, typically, insurance and taxes are about 1% of your overall home's value per year. Now, it's going to vary state to state. Liberal states are going to be a little bit more, conservative states a little bit less, but we're going to assume 1% is the cost in terms of insurance and taxes. So we got a 6% mortgage, we got 10% that we're putting down, and we've got 1% annually as the cost of insurance and taxes. So based on those numbers, how much house can you afford according to Dave Ramsey? Let's take a look. Now, if you make $50,000 a year household income, according to Dave Ramsey, with those current numbers, you can afford a house worth $123,000. If you make $75,000 a year household income, according to Dave Ramsey, you can afford a house worth $183,700. If you make $100,000 a year household income, you've cracked into the six figures, you can afford a house worth $244,200. If you make $150,000 household income, you can afford a house, according to Dave Ramsey, worth $368,500. If you make $200,000 per year household income, Dave says you can afford a house worth $489,500. Now, if you make more than $200,000, I didn't do the calculations for that, but you should be able to afford a house. Figure it out. Now, I'm curious, how do these numbers make you feel? Are you a little more encouraged, or are you more discouraged? Are you more hopeful, or are you more depressed? So the median house in America was sold in 2024 for $385,000. The median household income is only about $80,000. This tells us that buying a house in America, especially according to Dave Ramsey's guidelines, is very difficult, but it's not impossible. In fact, I've known and worked with many people who have bought houses according to Dave's guidelines in even these very crazy, expensive recent times. So let's look at some ways that you can do just that. Number one, you may want to consider changing your geography. Now, everybody knows the single biggest factor influencing home prices is location, location, location. Okay, so that's three factors. Or is it just one? I don't know. Who cares? Interestingly, the median home price in California is about $900,000. On the other hand, median home price in Mississippi is closer to $200,000. So how much house you can buy depends greatly on the state you are in. If your job's portable, or you can work from anywhere, or you just want more bang for your buck, you may want to consider moving states. Trust me, lots of people have done that recently for this very reason. In fact, more than 1 million people left California since the last census. And now that I think about it, there might be some other reasons for that. But anyway, even if you don't want to jump states, you may want to consider jumping counties. In many major metro areas, moving just one county over can as much as double your home purchasing power. So that's definitely something you might want to consider. Now, of course, the trade-off is that you may have to drive farther for work and school and church and what have you. But if you want more house for your money, adjusting your geography is a very effective way to achieve just that. Now, the next strategy is a little more drastic. You got to be a little bit brave or crazy to try it, but it's a way to afford way more house than you otherwise could, and that's buying a fixer-upper. And this is actually how my wife and I bought our first house. We had identified a couple of subdivisions that we really wanted to be in, our dream neighborhoods. And to be honest, we never believed, at least at the time, that we would be able to afford a house in either one of these areas. But after searching pretty hardcore for a better part of 2 years, we found a house in the exact neighborhood that we really wanted. Only problem, it was really choppy and really dated. But we figured we could change the house. You can't move the house, but you can change the house. So we bought the house where we wanted and fixed it up to be how we wanted. I'll be honest, it took some blood, sweat, and tears, and money, but that was all well spent in the end. Now, 5 years later, we're really glad that we did. Now, the final strategy is this. If all else fails and you can't yet afford the house you want, the answer nobody wants to hear is patience, waiting just a little bit longer. And waiting allows you to do two very important things. It allows you to save a bigger down payment, and it allows your income to increase. Most home buyers today are putting down 5% or less on their purchase, but saving up a larger down payment gives you several benefits. For one, it reduces the size of your mortgage, which in turn reduces the size of your monthly payment, allowing you to afford more house. And actually, if you save up a large enough down payment, 20% or more usually, it can reduce or eliminate needless expenses like PMI or private mortgage insurance, and that can be a huge savings. And don't forget, for most people in their 20s and 30s, their income is on the way up. What seems impossible now may be completely within reach in a year or two. In that time, you can save more money, get to know the market better, and likely will be able to afford substantially more house than you can right now. The bottom line is that buying a house in America today is more difficult than it was 30 years ago. No denying that. But that does not mean it's impossible, and it definitely doesn't mean you should give up on that dream. Never forget, homeowners have an average net worth that is 40 times that of renters. In the long run, you want to be in the homeowner group. If you got some value out of this video, I'd appreciate it if you could leave us a like, maybe even a comment. Tell me what you'd like to see in the next video. And if you'll hit subscribe, we'll make sure you don't miss a thing. I'm Jordan Hall. Thanks for watching.